more than human. Hello and welcome back to the channel, all my fellow more than humans. My name is Joseph Carroll. I write under the pen name J.R. Carroll. And today I am reviewing YouTube's biggest Authortuber. And specifically her first novel, or her first major novel, The Savior's Champion. Now, before we dive into that, make sure you like, subscribe, do all that good stuff for the algorithm. And I just started a Patreon, so if you want to check it out, it will be in the description below. All kinds of crazy cool perks to be had in there. And let's get into the review. Now, Jenna Moreci has been on YouTube for years. I don't know, maybe 7+ years now. And when I decided I was going to start getting into, getting back into writing, she was one of the very first people I found on YouTube. If you're into the AuthorTube sphere, and especially if you were into it two years or further ago, there was really two people that you would run into. First, you would run into Jenna Moreci, and then the other one was iWriterly. So those were like the two big ones. And when I started watching her, 3 years ago or so, she was as big as Daniel Green on one side, and he's on the BookTube and she was on the AuthorTube side. And, they were both at about the same level. And then I know about a year or so ago, something happened with her husband and, personal things, and she just wasn't able to make a lot of content, and that kind of slowed her growth down. But she's still like, I don't know, almost 300,000 subscribers or something like that. And I watched a lot of her videos. She talks about tropes, what tropes to not do, what tropes to do. And some of it is really good, especially if you were just starting out as a writer. Great to kind of get a baseline of skills from her. So coming into this book, and actually I've been on BookTube for over a year now, and I never really thought to go back and read her book. But I finished up all my TBR for the month, and I was just like, well, what can I just throw in? And I was like, you know what? Let's see if I can get Jenna's book in before the end of the month. And I don't think I have ever, known as much about an author's writing philosophy and writing style and their personal worldviews as I do her coming into a book. So, and years ago, at least 2+ years ago, I think Daniel Green did a review on this book, not very favorable, and that has been a theme for a lot of booktubers. Is let's just shit on Jenna Moreci's book. And so I was just like, okay, it's one of those weird feelings where you're like, okay, I am expecting to come into a book and you have this thoughts of, okay, I'm, not going to like it a lot, but, let's give it a shot anyway, because I love the premise of this book. The premise of this book is like, there's like a tournament, right? And I'm a sucker for a tournament. I love competition. I love competitions. So, I was like, all right, let's at least give it a shot. And oddly enough, what most people complained about in the book, I actually didn't really have much problem with. It's weird, like, my views on this book are pretty much flipped from a lot of people. Like, what they thought was great, I thought was the weakest part, and what they thought was bad, I thought was all right. And most people, whenever they, the thumbnails for this review is rant incoming, But I'm gonna tell you, I thought the book was all right. I didn't feel bad that I read the 550-page book. I mean, it wasn't bad. Now, what I will say is with this book, everything that happens is fairly obvious. So Tobias is our main guy, and he's fighting for the savior, and it's like a lineage of daughters throughout like hundreds of years, and they have this ability, this magic to heal things and heal and there's not war and there's not this and that because of the savior, and and you don't get too much. The magic is super soft, and you don't get too much of it. It serves the plot a lot in this book. And coming into this book, and if you listen to Jenna's videos, she talks about like, oh, dark fantasy, oh, vicious, and this and that. And everybody in this, all the main characters in this book are between the ages of like 20 and like 30, right? But they really kind of, especially Tobias, really acts like he's like 14 and going on a date for the first time. And that's like, there's a big twist, right, at the end of this book that you're going to see coming from a mile away. And the romance and stuff, like it's okay, it's fun, it's even fun at sometimes, but like like when certain things happen, you're just like, really, the dude's like 21, and I'm like, they don't act like that, and that is where the positives a lot of people say about this book are her inclusivity. She includes a lot of, she hits all the boxes, right? Nobody's left out, which inclusivity is fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with it, but you can't do it on purpose. Like, I want to do a video, like a whole video, about that, on its own. But when you start trying to, okay, I gotta make sure I get this in there, I gotta make sure I get that in there, it tends to be a little clunky, and there is that here. But then also, she wants to subvert tropes, but she tries to subvert like every trope. And so when you subvert every trope, it's just like, you feel like, okay. If you do a couple of them, that's cool. But when you subvert like every trope, then like, tropes are tropes for a reason. People like them, and now male authors, myself included, I'm sure, sometimes, females will be like, well, that's not how a woman acts. And that really comes into play here. Jenna makes Tobias what she wishes men were, I guess, and watching her videos, she has a certain worldview, and she puts that into Tobias. And a lot of times, as a man, okay, this is a lot of reverse, right? Because a lot of men, there's more men fantasy authors, and they write women characters. So I'm sure women have the same feeling. And let me know if I'm wrong, or let me know if I'm right, ladies. But I'm watching this, and I'm just like, that's not how guys think. That's not how a guy would act in that situation. Maybe that's how and I know, because I know her worldview, like, she wishes that guys would act this way. And then she always talks about not inserting yourself into a book, but she is very obviously Layla in this book. 100% that is her. And the thing about it is, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with inserting who you would love to be, because you think that's a cool character, right? And there are nobody is a complete custom person. Like, there are thousands of people out there just like you and me, right? So if you think that that character is cool, there's going to be thousands of other people out there that also think that character is really cool. But one thing I will praise her on is her writing ability, her technique, as far as her proficiency as a writer is really good. Technically aspect, and like I said, the story is very basic, very see-through, but it's fun. And there's nothing wrong with a fun story. I'm sure some authors will take offense at that when you write a big book, right? A bit, authors who write smaller books like myself, we understand, like, yeah, it's a small book. We want you to just have fun. Get in there for several, few hours and have fun with it. But a lot of times these authors with these big books are like, oh, it's a serious endeavor, and this wasn't. This wasn't this like this story master class. It was a very see-through but fun story. So that's, I don't want to ruin it for anybody. And like I said, there's not a lot to the story. It's it's a bachelorette meets a tournament Hunger Games style thing. There is gore. There is a little. It's funny. There's not as much sex in this as you would think if you watched her videos. But yeah, go out, read this book. Don't be afraid. With all the rant reviews that are out there with this, don't go in expecting some master class. Maybe that's where people, where a lot of these rants come in, because they think, well, she's the biggest authortuber. She should be Stephen Erickson, Stephen King writer. And it's just not that. But it was fun. So let me know, have you read this book? Is this book on your radar? Did you watch Jenna Moreci? Hit me in the comments. Make sure you hit that like button. That really helps me out. And join the Patreon if you want to as well. And remember, be more than human.